We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live, Boxing Ego Unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. This is going to be a good one. Is Eddie Hearn setting up Devin Haney for failure coming off such a difficult and tough fight versus Ryan Garcia? But let me explain. So Eddie Hearn has done several interviews, some with Andre Ward and other media. In the Andre Ward, he really threw Devin Haney under the bus. I'm not saying that Eddie Hearn is not keeping it real. I'm not saying that he wasn't speaking facts, because I do think he was cooking. But in a way, he's still throwing Devin Haney under the bus because he's talking about all the mistakes that Devin Haney's team made. Stuff like not having a rehydration clause for Ryan Garcia, saying Ryan Garcia was massive and manhandled Devin. He said he talked to Devin and there's bad blood. Devin is taking it hard. Like, these are conversations that the world wasn't privy to, a lot of it. Like, all of this stuff happened behind the scenes. So had Eddie Hearn not blabbermouthed and said this in an interview, whether he's being transparent and honest or not, we wouldn't know about it as a public. Now, fast forward to today's video. The reason why I'm questioning this is because Eddie Hearn threw Devin under the bus, for sure, saying Devin mentally, this is a long road back. Devin needs to take time off. There's previous interviews where Devin Haney conversation came up for Eddie Hearn, and Eddie Hearn was saying that Devin should pretty much take the year off because he was battered from pillar to post essentially by Ryan Garcia. Now, here's the kicker. In some of the more recent interviews, Eddie Hearn has suggested that he is willing to set up a fight in December with Devin Haney and get that rocking in Australia to fight Liam Paro. He also said in said interview that he will be in touch with Devin Haney. He said he's already ran it by Devin Haney, and Devin Haney says, that sounds good to me if the business makes sense and we can swing it. Devin Haney's also went to social media and says, I feel like popping back out, basically. So that's kind of where we're at. He says that he talked to Devin Haney, and Devin Haney is open to the idea if the business makes sense. But Eddie Hearn then said, we got to get this show on the road, pretty much negotiate and get this fight sewed up relatively soon, if that is to happen for a homecoming. Now, for starters, what happened to Richardson Hitchens? Richardson Hitchens left Mayweather Promotions, and he's Liam Paro's mandatory. So I'm really curious why the conversation is now Devin Haney versus Liam Paro instead of Liam Paro versus Richardson Hitchens, his mandatory. But then you have another fighter in Jerron Boots Ennis. Eddie Hearn can't get the deal done with top ranked fighter Brian Norman, a champion, in a unification for Boots Ennis. So likely Jerron Ennis will face a rematch that nobody wants versus Karen Chukadasian, right? So Jerron Ennis, instead of throwing more money at the situation to finally get a fight and pay and get the fight a unification that more people would want to see with Brian Norman in a cross promotion, or at least utilizing another stables fighter, Brian Norman, instead of doing that, it sounds like Eddie is content making the mandatory match happen. But then Liam Paro, his mandatory is Richardson Hitchens with the IBF. And then somehow Richardson Hitchens is not even really being mentioned as a possible Liam Paro opponent for Australia. So you see, this is boxing, and this is how these games get played. When it's a mandatory that the fans largely don't want, somehow those always get made with little hesitation. But then when there's actually a good mandatory that people would want to see, like Canelo versus Benavidez or Liam Paro versus Richardson Hitchens, now all of a sudden these fights don't happen. They don't materialize, or the promoter's not talking about it. So I want you guys to peep these things that I'm bringing up in this dirty game called boxing. Moving on. Let's say Richardson Hitchens, the mandatory, for some reason is out of the picture and he's not a Liam Paro candidate for Australia. So you would want Devin Haney, who you've been on record saying that Devin Haney was pretty much shaken up from Ryan testing positive with the Ostarine, and he didn't expect to lose, and he's taking it rather hard despite the fight getting overturned and things like that. And you want to put him back in the ring with a southpaw, right? In Liam Paro, who is a good fighter that beat Montana Love on Devin's undercard with Regis Prograis, and he just has a more impressive win against a guy who's considered the boogeyman, who just signed up with Matchroom and left PBC, Subriel Matias, and he beat Matias in Puerto Rico. So as far as I'm concerned, my question is, does Eddie Hearn truly care about Devin's well-being? Because to me, that sounds like a setup. I don't care what none of you guys are talking about. I understand it's a business. He's looking for a big fight, but Devin Haney coming off that Ryan Garcia performance, Eddie's already said, and Boxing Ego has told you, that I truly believe Devin should take the year off. Eddie Hearn's trying to bring him back already after a fight where he was spilled around. He did show heart with Ryan Garcia, but I'm not giving a ton of credit to Hart. There's journeymen who show heart and fought Mike Tyson before they got slaughtered, or they were getting beat up and they just kept getting up and things like that and made it the full distance. I don't really glorify or celebrate that. Sure, you would want your fighter to have a chin or have heart, be a warrior, not be a quitter. I get that. But it's also detrimental to a fighter when you just take sustained punishment. You look at Bermane Stiverne in the first Wilder fight. You're in there with a brute force knockout artist in his prime, was super young, and Wilder normally hits stuff and it goes away. Bermane Stiverne, he just took all the punches some kind of way from Deontay Wilder. You know, Wilder didn't have the same experience, but he still and always had that power. So Bermane Stiverne, I don't even know if he was ever the same fighter after that particular fight, because his very next fight later that year, at the end of the year, he fought a guy named Derek Rossi, and he's a former champion. He got dropped in that fight and hurt. And this was his first fight back after the Wilder first fight, right? You've seen guys like Antoine Dodson, who, when he fought that White Rhino dude that went to prison, Curtice, or whatever the dude's name is, that went to prison for the RICO law, he was never the same after he got abused and battered. So for Eddie to work and have worked with Devin Haney, it sure looks like he's putting a lot of pressure on Devin Haney by trying to have Devin come back this year and also make such a dangerous fight. A dangerous fight. For one, Devin Haney, his walk around weight looks pretty heavy. So who knows what his walk around weight is and how much you have to cut. Plus the baggage from the Ryan Garcia fight and how it played out and the punishment you suffered. And it's funny when I say things and I make videos recently about Devin Haney and I have constructive criticism, you guys say I'm hating, but then Tank Davis called Eddie Hearn a snake in a suit. This is the guy who was brought on by Devin Haney himself to be a second set of eyes, and he's totally throwing Devin Haney under the bus in recent interviews by telling the world what went on behind closed doors and the mistakes that Team Haney made, and he's removing himself from the blame, so he's absolved from any blame, and he's basically blaming Devin Haney, Bill Haney, and their lawyer. And then now on top of that, it looks like a setup to me, because I believe that Liam Paro, I know that Devin Haney already sparred Liam Paro. I heard he held his own, but that was also before he got battered by Ryan Garcia and actually lost and then had it reversed and everything that came with that. So Liam Paro definitely has momentum with his latest few performances with Montana Love and Subriel Matias. Plus, he will have home court advantage. Eddie Hearn's doing these interviews and he said, oh, I would love to make Devin. Devin has a profile in Australia from the George Kambosos fight. Kambosos, no disrespect to him, but he beat Teofimo, and some people to this day don't even know exactly how he did it, because after that, it was like a one-hit wonder almost type of performance, and he never looked that amazing since the Teofimo fight, you know? And that's how boxing works sometimes. Sometimes it's just your night. Someone has an off night, and you can capture that. Same thing with Buster Douglas. Buster Douglas knocks out Mike Tyson. He never really looked that sensational like he did in that particular fight. Definitely when he fought Evander Holyfield, he didn't, right? So I just think it's crazy that Eddie Hearn would even be considering Devin Haney. If you truly care about Devin Haney and you know that Devin Haney, what he just went through, and he's no longer a champion, and instead of talking tune-up, you trying to make a fight that you think makes sense, which if Liam Paro beats Devin Haney, then that's definitely going to catapult him and give him the boost, because that means he went through Montana Love, then he went to Subriel Matias, and then if he could beat Devin Haney, which I feel like in situations like this, you truly don't know how someone is going to look coming back off of a performance that was initially a loss, where your jaw's all swollen, people thought your jaw was broken. So coming off a performance like that, I think anything that's elite is gonna be a danger, because it's like almost like coming back off of a very bad injury. You don't really know how your body's gonna respond if you got destroyed in your last fight. And despite being undefeated, that's what happened to Devin Haney. He very well got destroyed by Ryan Garcia. And the sad part is Ryan didn't even look like he was fully prepared and disciplined. He didn't even look fully trained, and he inflicted so much damage as soon as he let his hands go in that particular fight. So to me, it's looking like a setup. I think Devin Haney, I understand being a warrior and stuff like that, but you got to make your next move your best move. And if he does end up getting offered and taking a fight like Liam Paro, to me, if I was Devin Haney's dad or team, I'd be looking at that as probably too much risk for what it's worth. It's not really a big, huge fight. It's a southpaw. Yes, it's a title fight, but I don't know. I think I would be in the mindset if I got wronged, or my fighter got wronged and fought someone on Osterine or someone who tested positive for banned substance, and there were many mistakes. It's not even just what Ryan did. It's also what Devin didn't do. His defense looked leaky. His feet weren't, he was slipping, and his legs didn't look good. Couldn't get out the way of the left hook. So I'm telling you, his next fight is going to be paramount. And I think his next fight very well could make or break him, because boxing is about timing and boxing is about ebb and flow. So if you take too tough of a fight, you know, I've seen this in people's career arcs where they just keep pushing and keep like have a difficult fight, and then their next fight is super difficult. And then before you know it, they're just like no longer even ranked. You know, to a degree, I hate to say this, but Deontay Wilder recently has been like that. Like Deontay Wilder, he ended up losing to Fury. He had a 1-round deal with Robert Helenius, but then he does this Saudi business, and then he fights a former champion and Joseph Parker, loses, and then his next fight, he says, I'm going to retire if I lose, and he gets knocked out. Because you fought a 300-pound Chinese Olympian in Zelle Zhang, who destroyed Joseph Parker, the guy that just beat you. And I feel like when boxers and their teams allow for that, it's just too hard of a schedule, and you're not giving your fighter enough time to recuperate. What Wilder should have done, given his activity, in my opinion, is after Helenius, that was 1 round. You didn't go rounds. You didn't know how you would look in a 12-round deal. And then you fought. You weren't acclimated to Saudi Arabia, fought Joseph Parker and lost. And then after losing 12 rounds, almost like all the rounds in a 12-round Day of Reckoning card with Joseph Parker, they put you in with Zelle Zhang. That's a setup. And I told you guys that. That is a pure setup. Yes, Wilder has the power, but again, you got to move. I'm not saying duck and be a chicken, but you have to be strategic and have enough respect for your fighter and not just be chasing the bag to the point where your moves actually extend and make sense for the trajectory of your fighter. Why, if you're Devin Haney, why rush? He's young, he's under 30, he had a bad performance and a bad last fight. Why would you be looking to become a champion with responsibilities again with a dangerous southpaw? I don't really see that. So this is what I warned you guys about. Devin Haney is going to be an uphill battle, but it already looks like he's being potentially cashed out in sink or swim type of scenarios. Sandor Martin's a difficult fight. Liam Paro is a difficult fight. So I really don't even know what Devin Haney's going to do. And then he's talking about possibly moving up to welterweight. Who are you going to fight at welterweight? Those are all dangerous fights too, especially the first one back from the Ryan Garcia. Until we see exactly how Devin Haney looks, to see if he looks like the Devin Haney that fought Regis Prograis. And you guys do not understand from a boxing stance, that is not easy to do. It is not easy to get battered, know you got battered, and pick yourself off the canvas. They said it was 3, but it was more like 6, 8 times or whatever Ryan knocked you down. You were badly hurt. You couldn't even stand on the turnbuckle after the fight. You looked like you had no energy, and then just recuperate and look amazing. That is hard to do, especially when your ops seen the same thing that I seen. They watched your last fight, they watched tape, so they're gonna pick up what they can pick up and try to exploit your weaknesses. Like, oh, this guy might not have a chin, or he can't defend the left hook. That's how boxing works. It is a cutthroat business. Let me know what you guys think. Is Eddie Hearn setting up Devin?